The fabulous new Nordic Woods release from Catherine Puller Designs features this fun Alpine Village stamp and die set. Today I'm using it to create 2 cards where we're going to create a partial die cut scene on a top folding card. I'm Verity and welcome to my channel Pretty Little Button, where I make paper crafting tutorials for the everyday crafter. So as I said, I'm using the Alpine Village stamp and die set from Catherine Puller Designs, and this is a really sweet little sort of Scandi Nordic style Alpine Village with lots of different buildings, a few trees and some beautiful sentiments to design with. So I've got 2 pieces of card here. So one card, the card on the right, which is going to have the church on, is 6 inches tall by 4 1/4. And the card on the left, which is going to have a house on, is 7 inches tall by 4 1/4. Okay, so I'm taking this card for the church, which is my 6 inches by 4 1/4, and I'm just marking 3 inches upwards. So this is where I'm going to have my fold line or my partial cut die cut line on the scene. So I've just marked this with pencil, so I roughly know where I want to stamp and die cut. So with the second piece of card, I'm going to be marking this 3 1/2 inches up. Because the house is a bit smaller than the church, I can make the scene a bit more higher up on the card in the fold line. Okay, so I'm just positioning my dies. So this is the church die, and I'm positioning this over that fold line or cut line that I drew. But I'm also just going to mark the 5 1/2 inches because that's how tall the envelope is, and I need to make sure my church doesn't stamp and die cut above that 5 1/2 inch area. So I'm just drawing a pencil line just so I know where that area is, and then I can position my church on there. So making sure not all of the die goes over that middle cut line that I marked at 3 inches, because I need some of the stamp and die to still be attached to the card. So I'm just then positioning my dies where I want them to be. And again, on this one with the house, I've also drawn a 5 1/2 inch line just so I know where the top is. Though these stamps aren't as tall, so I haven't got to worry about that. And I'm just positioning them along that pencil line I created, making sure that some of the die overlaps that line. So I'm not going to have the die cut completely. Okay, so I'm now ready to die cut. So I've got my sandwich ready, and I'm just positioning the top die cutting plates along that line that I drew, making sure I'm covering the top half of the card because it's the top half of the dies that I want to die cut. I don't want to die cut the bottom half. So then once I've die cut and run that through, I just remove the die cuts, and you can see I now have a partial die cut because the plates weren't covering all of the die, not all of the die cut. So once I've done that, I then also need to, so I've done this with the church as well, we need to create little fold lines to ensure that we can fold. And we need to do this so it aligns up with the ends of where the die cuts are. So I'm just going to use my scoreboard, and I'm positioning the card onto my scoreboard, and I'm just using one of my misty corners just as a straight edge to line up my score line, because I've not got a lot of area to score because there's a large amount of it that needs to remain unscored because I'll be stamping in that area. I'm just using the misty straight edge to just ensure that I do score my line all in a nice straight line. So once I've done that, I can fold it over, and then I can just reinforce those score lines with my bone folder to ensure I get a nice crisp fold. As you can see, I now have 2 scenes cut out of the top of the cards, and I have a top folding card. So I'm positioning this now in my Misty stamping platform to stamp my images, and I've unfolded it just so I've got a flat surface to do this. And I'm positioning the house over my die cut area, aligning the stamp up, and it's good to, unfortunately my head is getting over the top, but it's good to really get over the top of your stamp to ensure you line it up nicely. So once I've closed my Misty door to pick that up, I'm then going to ink up the stamp. So I'm going to try and do a bit of multicoloured stamping with this single stamp. So I'm just using icing on the cake Catherine Puller ink to stamp to ink up the top of the stamp. So this is going to stamp the roof, and I'm just using a baby wipe just to wipe away some of any of the excess ink that's got onto areas of the stamp I don't want it to. And then this will allow me just to stamp this down by closing my MISTI door, and I will stamp a nice dark brown roof. Now I'm going to go back and ink the rest of the stamp up in Sandcastle and remove any that may have just got onto the roof. It's not such a problem if it does stamp down, because it is a lighter colour stamping onto a dark colour. You won't notice it so much. And then I'm just stamping it a couple of times to get a really good impression and nice and even colour. I'm also stamping some of the trees, and for this I'm using the new Deck the Halls green Catherine Pooler ink, which is a lovely green ink. And I'm just stamping these down, aligning them up with the die cut areas and just stamping them. So to finish this card off, I'm also going to add a sentiment from the stamp set, and this reads, "From our home to yours." And I've positioned this into my MISTI. I'm using that MISTI straight edge again just to make sure that it's nice and straight on the front of my card. And then I'm just stamping this down in the new Cranberry Fizz ink, which is a lovely red ink. So I'm just going to show you this again using the second card. So I'm stamping the whole of the church, and this time I'm stamping it all in Sandcastle to begin with. Stamping that down onto the die cut area, having aligned that up with my MISTI stamping tool. And then I'm going back in with icing on the cake. So for this I'm just doing the top spire of the church. And again, I'm using my baby wipe just to remove any of that excess ink on areas of the stamp I don't want it to be. And then I'm just stamping that down by closing my door, giving it a nice dark spire. Now I decided I also wanted to sort of stamp the window frames and ledge in the icing on the cake. So I've just added a little ink over that area of the stamp, then just use my baby wipe again to remove any excess. Again, I stamped some of the trees, and these were stamped in the Deck the Halls ink. Now the sentiment for this card reads, "Hello Winter." This is a lovely sentiment, and I really love the script that's used to write the word winter. It's beautiful. And again, I'm stamping this in the Cranberry Fizz ink. So this, I've used two of the new Catherine Pooler inks, which are very festive for the season, a lovely green and a lovely red, but they could be used all year round. And this just is a beautiful sort of rich dark red. Now I did finish these cards off screen with a few sequins from the Oak City sequin mix, which is the new sequin mix released with this collection. And I also stamped a couple of extra trees using lime Rickey Catherine Pooler ink and die cut those just to add them onto the front, just to add a little bit more depth and dimension to that little scene. And I really love how these cards turned out with the cute partial die cut appearance with that scene at the top, creating a top folding card. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing to the channel. You can also hit that bell icon to be notified when my next video is up. You'll find a list of links to the supplies used in today's video in the description box below. Until next time, happy crafting!